Hi guys, it's me again, Marcus from the Academy of Poker. And for today's video, we will talk about how to play flush and straight draws in different positions, different situations, and I just picked out some scenarios that I played myself, some from way ago, some from just some short time ago, and I'll let you know about my ideas in that situations and how to generally just go through that. Before I get into the video more, of course, let me tell you about our new course. You see below me already, we have still our group course that's worth 300 euros and that you can get for free. Just hit the link in the description below. Same thing goes for a new course, which is called our Free Roll Master. So this is more for beginners, but also if people who just enjoy to play free rolls but already have some knowledge in poker. I think this is a great thing. It's as well for free, and we give you some videos about how to play those free rolls, about the types of players in those free rolls, and about the basic poker math you need for these tournaments to crush them and to make quite some money without even investing anything but time in it. So make sure to check that out, and as said, hit the link in the description below. And if you're already doing that, also don't forget to subscribe us and follow us on Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you find us. But now let's head into the video. And as you see, as said, I'm gonna go through some general tips, and then we will have some scenarios here where I will just, as said, let you or tell you about my feelings there, my ideas in that situations, and how to approach those in general. So, some general tips. Of course, as always, if you only have draws, don't overplay them versus most of the players, depending on the player type, of course, always, but be careful in those situations. If you're in position, so if you see bet, it should depend, of course, on your position, on your stack, the style of player you are, and the style of player your opponent is, and some different things. Stage of the tournament, for example, if it's a PKO or not, if it's a rebuy or not, and all those things. Of course, always know what to do on the turn and have a plan for the later streets, or if you bet, have a plan when you get raised, for example. But there's a big chance on the turn that you don't get your draw. For straight draw, you have 8 outs in general. If it's a gut shot, only 4. If you have a nope, if you have a flush draw, it will in a maximum be 9 outs. So you're not gonna hit it every time, and therefore have an idea what you're doing. Also keep the ranges in mind. So meaning this is pretty important then for the positions. If the big blind defends versus you and you open, for example, King 10, the flop is Queen Jack 3, the big blind range is so big that it does not have all the Queen Jack combos, for example. It does have some 3 combos, but there's going to be so much combos that do not hit, and then you can maybe just get it without even the need of hitting your draw and just stuff like that. But as said, in the scenarios, you will see that a bit more clear what I'm talking about. Um, Next thing is just don't be afraid of aggression. And this is again for the style of player here. So especially if you see in your stats that the opponent is maybe an aggressive player, or if he's really, really tight, then you can just get the pot and you don't even need to hit your draw. Of course, then the payout might be bigger because you have a really strong hand, but sometimes because I said you're not going to hit your draw all the time, it's just easy to win the pot directly. And then when you're out of position, make sure also to have a plan, but have like good odds or implied odds at least. When you hit, maybe you just have the gut shot there, but you're in the big blind, and it's not expensive to continue, and then you have good implied odds because if you hit that gut shot, it might be a bit disguised, and therefore it will be easier for you to create value out of that hand. Now we jump into some scenarios, and we're going to start with the straight draws. In this scenario, as you see, we are in the cutoff versus the big blind player. We start with 6-5 suited here. We are pretty deep. You see I'm opening to the blinds are 1-8, 3-6. I'm opening a bit more than 2 big blinds here. That's my standard with the stack I'm having. Um, then we see the call here from the big blind, and we flop an open-ended straight draw. Pretty nice. And also we do have some backdoor flush draw with the 6-5 with the spades. As you see, there's the 7 of spades. There might be a lot of spade cards coming up, which is pretty nice. But all in all, we just have really good equity in that hand. The big blind uh, can of course hit a 10, can have hit a 7, maybe he has 8, 9, a 4 or something like that. Um, but we have so much equity that we definitely gonna continue here with a c-bet. You see I'm going for a bit more than 50%. The reason for that is that here the board is pretty draw heavy, and in general we should most of the times go for a bigger sizing when this board is so draw heavy. Because with all our value hands and or in this case big draw heavy hands, hands that have a lot of equity, we want to make sure that the pot gets bigger because we're gonna win this pot a lot of times with our equity. And if we, for example, if we have like aces here now without a diamond, we definitely want the opponent to yeah, be charged for running forced draws. If he has, as I said, like if he has like Jack 8 in diamonds or so, he's gonna have a lot of draws, and then we want to make it a bit more expensive, of course, for him to get there. So as I said, we see bet, we see the call, and the turn then brings us the flush, the straight. It brings us the straight. We hit our open ender, and that's pretty nice because it's also a second spade here. So I mean, we have the nuts right now. That's 100% sure. Uh, but maybe if the opponent does have some, if he has like 8, 9, for example, because then if there's a jack or a 6 on, yeah, jack or a 6 on the river and that one is in spades, that would be really nice for us because then he hits a straight, but there's also the backdoor flush, which he might not give us too often, and then we can even get some more value out of our hand. However, in this case now, and of course, because you can see the result, it does make sense for the opponent to now bet. He bets half the pot, which in my opinion is not the best way because he does go for some kind of a blocker bet in my opinion because he picked up the flush draw here and he doesn't want to make it too expensive. If he checks, we can bet a lot of times, and we will probably go bigger because we already went more than 50% on the flop. Now he just but bets 50%. In my opinion, going for like a blocker bet with overcards and the flush draw, I would try to go not that big here. I would go for maybe a 30%. So when there's 43 in there, maybe like 14, 16K, something like that. However, we have the nuts, and of course this board is really draw heavy, but I don't see him bet calling a lot with like a 10 out of position, for example. It will be really hard, so I think we can this time play it slowly. Also, we do have the backdoor flush draw as well. So we do have the nuts right now, but we have a redraw to even a better hand with the flush. So we just call, and we see a river. That's the jack of clubs. Now, I said that's like one of the hands. If the opponent has 8, 9, who gets there? He could also just flat defend Jack 7, Jack 10 maybe, even Jack 4 sometimes, even though that would be weirdly played on the end. But as said, it is possible that he does that. So in this case here, because of course, we have to mix it up between our value hands and our bluffs. So the jack is, as I said, it's in his range quite often. He could also, if he has like jack 8 of diamonds, jack 9 of diamonds, maybe even jack 6 of diamonds, queen jack of diamonds, king jack of diamonds, and as you see also the same things in spades is possible that we know we can get called. And in this in this thing, I think I should have gone bigger. So I only have the second nuts right now, but the jack is a pretty good hand for his range right now. So I think because here, as you see, I just go a third of the pot, that I should have gone bigger in this one. But in general, if you think he has a lot of missed flush draws, for example, if you put that in consideration, then it probably is also okay to go for a smaller sizing because then we might see him calling with just a 10, or if he picked up maybe two pair with 10-7, 10-4 or something like that, um, where the big sizing it looks really scary. But because so many draws did not come in, I think the bigger sizing here is better then. So instead of going for 30k here, as you see, I think probably going for 70k would have been the better decision. And all his two pair combos are gonna call me. As said, like all if he hits the jack on the river as he did, he will still call me. So a bigger sizing would have been a bit better here. But yeah. Anyway, we got the value, and I think also important thing is that we here with the nuts because we have the redraw to the flush that we can sometimes take it slower. And yeah, because we're in position, we can let him bluff. So when there's a big blank here, he might try to bluff it anyway and not checks it as he did this time because he rivered some showdown value with top pair. But yeah, in my opinion, pretty interesting. Up to the next hand. Here, this time, it's not that different. Instead of being in the cutoff, we're in the middle position, and our opponent is in the middle position, and we are in the big blind. Sorry, mixed it up. So, as said, we are, let me adjust the camera quickly. We are in the big blind now. We decide to, because it's from middle position, so the opening range is a bit tighter than from the later positions. So we decide here to just call with Queen Jack of clubs. I think pretty standard. You see he also goes for the min opening. And the flop is pretty okay for us, I'd say. We do flop an open-ender. We have also still both overcards, and this does not hit the opponent's range too well. If you think about middle position, he's gonna open ace 10 offsuit and suited, king 10 suited probably, queen 10 suited, jack 10 suited, and 10-9 suited. The rest is there's not, of course, sixes, nines, and tens, eights and sevens will still continue here, but other than that, there's a lot of overcards he's gonna have, and maybe even some weaker aces. So if he c-bets here, this would be even a pretty nice um, position for us to check raise, because for our range, this is a pretty good flop. We've defend 8-7, suited offsuited, 9-6, 9-7, 9-8, 6-7, 6-8, 10-9, 10-6, 10-8, 10-7, Jack 8, and all these hands. So we have a pretty big amount of a big number of hands that have that hit this flop really well. So we could consider a check raise here. Donking, as said in other videos, is not really a thing, but in some situations it might make sense. However, here I think check raising would have been the good thing. Now, as you see, he checks it back. The turn is a queen of spades, and here the flush comes in, but if we think about, would he really check back a lot of his spades, spade flush draws? And maybe he would check behind Queen Jack of Spades because there he is just a monster draw, and he might not really want to get scare us away because he's gonna have so many outs. But on the other hand, if he just has like a flush draw, there's a big chance for us to have hit at least one or two pair, right? Or maybe even the straight. So he probably is gonna c-bet all of his flush draws, and as well all of the hands that hit a pair here or made a set. Like same for the sets. It's a great hand, but he needs to get value out of that. So if you have a flush draw, if you have top pair, if you have two pair in some sort, um, he's gonna get called with a set. So there's so many hands, and if he checks that back, the likelihood of those hands being in his range are not that big anymore. So, however, we hit the turn pretty nicely. We hit top pair now. We still have the open end to go with. We don't have any spade, but anyway, we have top pair now. He checked behind, so he did show some weakness here, and because we are out of position and we checked through on the first street, we decide to go for value now and in a bigger way. So as you see, we go for roughly, yeah, like 2/3 of the pot, more or less. Yeah, makes sense. 50 something, yeah, or more or less 2/3 of the pot, and he calls. So he can have, of course, ace queen, king queen, maybe even the same hand, queen jack. That's a thing. Over pairs, again, he would have continued with them. So there's only really, in my opinion, king queen and ace queen that we're beat to. But on the other side, there's so many draws he's gonna have. So as said, he's gonna open almost all the ace x combos. So he's gonna have the ace of spades quite sometimes, and maybe he has the jack of like ace jack with the jack of spades, ace king with the king of spades that he checked behind here because he might know that this is a good hand for his range, and so a lot of draws. Um, so he decides to call, I said. Now the river is a really inconsequential deuce of hearts that does not change a thing. We, however, check it because we know he's gonna have so many draws here and not that many value hands. As said, there's really only king queen and ace queen. He might also just call with king jack of spades, for example, for the straight flush, of course. Jack eight of spades, which he will probably not open too often. And yeah, ace jack of spades, so any kind of nut flush draw. But as I already said, I do think, or I'm pretty sure, that he would just c-bet them on the flop because we wants to get value and we're gonna hit that board quite often. As you see, he now goes for roughly a 90% pot bet, and I think in that situation, yeah, we have a pretty clear call. I think I snap called this here, and I said there's only really ace queen and king queen that are yeah beating me here, and that might check back the flop. But other than that, we will be good, like always. And also, I do think that we would choose another sizing because without having really, yeah, a big, yeah, without just or with just having top pair, um, I don't think he's gonna go for that big value because he's gonna be afraid to get trapped. So I do think he would go for a smaller sizing. However, we just snap this one off. And we get shown, as you see, ace 4, which is pretty loose opening in my opinion, but as you see, at the ace of spades. So our read here was pretty good, and we scooped a pretty nice, sizable pot. Next up, one more with the straight draw. In this case, we're going to go for some multi-way action. So as you see, we have early position, middle position, button, and big blind. We, in this case, are sitting in the big blind. And this is an early stage. So of course, a lot of times you're going to have some multi-way action. So as you see, early position opens, middle position calls, button calls, and we call. We flop an open ender again, which is pretty nice. It gets checked through. If somebody bets, like if the early position would have bet, for example, we definitely call once. With the open ender, he's not going to do it too often though. Maybe only with an overpair or with a set, maybe with two pair, but he should not really have Jack 9 in the range from early position. However, this is early stage, so some people might just play every hand, right? Um, Now I said it gets checked through, so I think if I had a queen, for example, I'm feeling pretty good as well. But we do hit the 8 of diamonds on the turn, which gives us the nuts. Pretty easy now for us. We want to bet. There's 3 players, and somebody's gonna have something there for sure. So we want to get some value. So as you see, we bet again pretty big, 90%, and just the button calls us. Now on the river, we see the 5 of diamonds. So the backdoor flush comes in. Um, After checking the flop, there's some possibility that the button called, let's say, ace 10 of diamonds, ace 7 of diamonds. So just a flush draw with maybe some extra equity. Maybe he just had the nut flush draw there and just decides to call, even though he does not really get good odds on this call. Um, I decide to still bet half the pot because I feel like there's enough hands that I can still charge. He would probably call some jacks behind, maybe a pair of nines. Um, Maybe picked up ace 8, for example. that decides to call there, even though it's completely just a bluff catcher. Now he raises me, and that's a thing, in my opinion. Especially this was I think a smaller tournament as well. So in early stage, if you get raised on the river, in those small tournaments, when some draws came in, we just have to give it up here. We have the nut straight, and we even block a diamond with the queen, but you just barely get raised on the river, with a bluff. So in this case, I decided to give it up, and I think in like 98% of the time or so, I'm gonna be right about this because the race here on the river just looks so strong, and the way he played it, checking the flop, just calling the turn, and then raising the river with the diamonds coming in, just makes a lot of sense for him. If he just did it with like ace eight and had the ace of diamonds, then I'll like tipping my hat to him, but I'm pretty sure that he did this just for value because I said it was like I think it was a $2 or $3 tournament. So if the people show aggression, then we have to give them credit for it. And it's really hard to fold your straight here then, but I think it's the right decision. Yeah, one more for the straight draw that we have here. And this time it's not about getting one, but how to play if we don't hit it. So you see, we have the middle position and the cutoff. I'm in middle position too. We are pretty deep, so I'm raising Jack 8 suited here. The cutoff comes along, and we see a flop where we, what a surprise, flop an open-ended straight draw here. Uh, Cutoff's range consists of a lot of ace X up to ace Jack suited. I think ace Queen, ace King suited would be three-bitted, of course, maybe even sometimes ace Jack suited, but he's gonna flat them a lot of times. Stuff like he would on that dry board flat threes, nines, and tens, I'm sure. Jack 10, Queen Jack, the same. And I said like Ace Jack or Ace 9, for example, also would be hands that he has there. And yeah, we continue. We have the backdoor flush draw with the hearts as well. And we have the open ender, which is nice. So we decide to c-bet here for again a bit more than half the pot. This is considering the positions because it's middle position versus cutoff. So on that board there should not be. It's pretty dry, and I think going a bit higher here gives us a bit more information than going smaller because we gonna see a lot of floats here, and in this way I think it's yeah it helps us more throughout the development of the hand. The turn now is the ace of diamonds. Here I decided to check. However, I do think betting would be fine because we will have all the ace X in our range still. Except of course just like ace 6 offsuit, ace 7 offsuit, but almost all, I think, yeah, all suited. I would open all suited aces and all the baby aces, and then from ace 8 offsuit again. So I think small mistake on from my side here to check that. However, as said, sometimes it's okay just to see because he already called the flop on a bigger sizing, so maybe he has something, but then he would check behind the turn because the ace shouldn't help him too much. He now goes for a really small, rather small sizing, so just like a bit more than 33%, so 36% or something like that. And therefore I called because I got almost, yeah, 1 to 5, so only needed 20%, and I also had in mind that my jack should be good a lot of times. However, there's the 6 of spades on the river, and that is not a really good card. After me showing some weakness here, I would now also, if I decide to sometimes check my ace X here on the turn, I would check it on the river as well. So I'm gonna check most of my bluffs here too. And it's really hard to get a bluff through. When he bets the turn, the river doesn't change anything, and his range looks better than mine now. So he goes for a small bet again, and this does look really much like a small ace or so that tries to get some value or wants to be picked up by a bluff in some way. But yeah, we give it up here. I think, as I said, my mistake is here to not continue on the turn, but that happens. Now we go to the flush draws here, and this way we start. This time we start with with some multi-way action here again. So we have the early position versus cutoff and versus big blind. We sit in the big blind with Jack 10 of diamonds, and early position opens, cutoff calls, and we decide to call as well. So the flop is almost like a dream for us. We flop an open-ended straight flush draw, but however, it is ace high. So now, as it goes really fast here, I'm not going to do too much talking. We have so much equity, and I'm happy to get it in here. Also because we might be bluffing sometimes, um, or actually, like the big blind should not raise too much here because the range on this board should not include too many. Our big blind range does not hit that board too well or too strong. At least we can of course flat some smaller ace x and stuff, um, but in general we don't hit it too often. As you see, the early position raiser continues for roughly a third. We get the fold and we go pretty straightforward here. If he has like ace king, ace jack or something like that, or even ace queen, we have so many outs, and this was also a bounty tournament, so I'm really happy to just realize my equity in here and get it in. So yeah, we raise it up, the opponent goes all in, and as you see, for 3.6k, which is only 4 times our raise. So we get a good price, and as said, we wanted to get it in. We have so many outs here. As you see, in this case, he had aces, but we do hit our flush on the river, so we get a bounty here. And that's like one way of playing it straightforward. As said, always depends on the tournament. So in this case, because it was a PKO, a bounty tournament, it's really good to realize your equity. I would not, for example, do that if we have like 4-3 in diamonds now. Because here the thing is, that you don't have any redraws and your pairs are never going to be good. Um, in this case, of course, if we hit a jack or a 10, it will not be good almost ever. Only if he goes crazy with pocket eights or with 10-9 or something like that. But we do have redraws, as said, with the king or with the 8 because we have the straight draw as well. So just have that in mind, that we have different equity between Jack 10 of diamonds, or if it would be King 10 of diamonds, King Jack of diamonds, and hands like 5 6 of diamonds. Those I would probably not get in here versus that range because we only gonna have our flush draw outs and no other backdoor outs. Um, and we can be pretty sure that the opponent is gonna hit that range. So that's like the difference here, but I think that's understandable. Up to the next hand here. Again, we go for multi-way pot. Early position versus button versus big blind. We again sit in the big blind, and we get raised from early position. There's one call from the button, and we call as well. Now the flop is almost, or not the same, but similar. We flop a pretty good flush draw. In this case, even the nut flush draw, and have a gotcha to go with. And this time we also have the ace, which gives us an overcard to the board. So if we hit that, it's going to be good quite often. You see, we check it. The early position continues here again for roughly a third. We get a fold from the button. And as you see, we have in this case, we have 25k. There's already 11k in the pot. And even if he has like tens now, we have so much equity. If he has king 10, queen 10, jack 10, jacks, queens, kings, we want to get it in, realizing our equity. And as said, with the ace of clubs, we also have an overcard. So the worst thing to see would be actually like aces or ace 10, or tens, of course. But other than that, we look really good here. I'm assuming that fives and threes should not be in his range here from early position. Might be the case sometimes, of course, never say never in poker, but in general, it shouldn't be. Ace 10, actually the same. So ace 10 suited might be a thing, depends on how deep he is. But I think you get the point. If you learn our charts from the Academy of Poker, if you visited our course, for example, then you have those, then you know what I'm talking about. Or if you have them from somewhere else, because the ranges don't differ that much. Yeah, we get it in. The run out is another 3 and another 3, so we do not hit anything. But luckily for us, the opponent just had King Jack of clubs, so we're good and we win that pot. We have 2 more to go, so one more from this time, no multi-way pot, but blind versus blind action, which is yeah pretty interesting as well. A lot of times there are big ranges clashing against each other, so sometimes yeah you really have to put out some interesting moves there to get either the small blind or big blind to fold, whichever position you are in. So you see here now we sit in the small blind and we raise it 3x. My standard raise size rough is like between 3 and 4x. So always depends on the stack of the opponent, of course. If he's deep stack, then I might go a bit bigger. If he's short stack, I might go a bit smaller. But as said, there's this range roughly in which I'm raising here. We have Queen Jack offsuit. That's a hand that we can raise call with if he decides when he's deep stacked and he decides to just 3-bet it. We can still call even though we're out of position because Queen Jack is playing really well. Um, we can also limp call that sometimes, depending on how aggressive the opponent is, or even limp shove, depending on the stacks. But in this case, I decide to raise it, and we get called. The flop is actually pretty good for us, as said, because we're blind versus blind, and the ranges are pretty wide. He's not gonna have the Queen of Hearts, King of Hearts, Ace of Hearts too often. He's gonna have smaller hearts, but in this case, I decide to check to also see if because if he bets, that's a sign of him having probably sometimes the better flush draw or at least have hit something. He checks it back. So assuming that he's not gonna be on a flush draw too often, I think the Ace of Hearts will be good so often that he can even try to value bet this one, and sometimes even the King and Queen of Hearts, depending on what their second card is here. If he, of course, has already has the flush, then checking it back is fine in my opinion because there's almost no scary turn card. And if we would hit like two pair or something like that, we would definitely c-bet this. So that is a thing to consider at least. Now on the turn, we pick, instead of the flush, we pick up a straight draw because we also had the gut shot. As you see, we check it again here. In this way, it's just depending on the player type. The opponent was pretty aggressive here, so I think that we can go for a check raise often, and I was like 100% sure he's gonna bet the turn now. As you see, he goes for the turn bet, and I just made a sneaky little clickback raise. I'm in this case, I'm sure that I'm in front. I want to charge him with from some hands. And as you see, I only had 65k behind on the river as the 6 of clubs comes in. And therefore, I just wanted to make the pot bigger to have a good shoving hand on the river. As said, he might trap. He could play like this with with a flopped flush. However, I do think on the turn he would have gotten it in if I raise it here with just having 2 times the raising size behind. So that's another thing why I did the small check raise, because if he just calls, I was pretty sure he does not have the flush then. As said, because of the sizings and stuff, I would expect him to get it in there on the turn. Because if we even raise here, there's a big chance we're not folding the turn if he 3-bet shoves here. Yeah, river, pretty easy. We have the second nuts after the flush then, and in this case we played it pretty nicely because he was able to yeah pick up another also a straight on the river, and we got the rest in, so winning this pot. And yeah, now to the last one for today. Cutoff versus big blind. We sit in the big blind again, and this time it's not a flush draw on the flop, but it's about having a backdoor flush draw here. So you see, we get raised from in the cutoff and have king queen suited in the big blind. We can 3-bet this hand for value even. King queen suited is definitely good enough versus cutoff open range. But we were pretty deep here, and I felt like I can use this range advantage I now have for later spots on the flop turn on river through this hand, because also the opponent was pretty aggressive. So king queen, even if it's just king high, will look pretty nicely. You see, we got a flop of 5 6 7. That is a pretty good flop actually for our range in the big blind. So I was thinking about even check raising it here, which I could definitely do sometimes. But here, because I had two overcards and the backdoor flush draw, so I had some nice equity still. I just called here. I would probably check raise with some hands that have like instant equity, so maybe like some eights and some fours I have there. So as I said, like 8 10, 8 jack, four deuce, 4 8, which would be straight, but for maybe 4 9 even, or 4 5 8, 6 8, and stuff like that. Because it's a bit easier to continue on several turns, as it will be hard to for the turn not to be some kind of a scary card for both of us if I decide to check raise too lightly. Also, having the opponent's range in mind, he cannot be on a lot of overcards only, so therefore it will be hard on a lot of turns for us to continue with this hand. However, in this case, then we got the Jack of Hearts, so that will be a pretty nice hand if we check raise the flop to continue on the turn. We now decide to check it again on the turn, hoping that he continues, and then we could check raise, probably check shove, depending on our stack here. But he checks it behind, so we get a free card, and we are able to hit our flush. Now, as you see, I decided to go almost pot size, and the reason for that is that I'm pretty sure a lot of times he's just gonna have nothing at all. So it doesn't make sense to go for a small bet, just trying to hit, maybe get him calling with eights or nines, because those are all just bluff catchers right now. And it's not like he knows he's gonna be good here and he can let him fire or so. Checking, of course, doesn't make sense because he's not gonna have, other than jacks, sevens, sixes, which he would continue with on the turn for sure. Um, he's not gonna have any hand he's gonna bet. So I decided to go for a pretty big bet to be polarizing. Um, we called the flop, so we could have something there, but we can have just all the 8x combos, 4x combos, um, and we would not go that big with just a jack, because then we're blocking some of his some hands that we want to get value from, so we would not go that big with just a jack. In this case, as I said, I want to be really polarizing, so I decide to go for almost the pot size, hoping that he either goes for some ace high hero call, or he maybe has aces or kings he for some reason checked on the turn, or he even had some seven, some six, and as you see in this case, he had the ace seven of spades, which I think he should continue on the turn with, because the jack should not do too much to our range. I don't see us calling. Um, we would call with like queen jack and jack 10 of clubs and spades maybe because of the backdoor draws, and then it's almost the same as king queen here. But other than that, we will not really call any jack x. So I think continuing on the turn could help him to get also get a lot of my floats away from it. So if maybe defended ace nine and called with the overcard and the gut shot, I would fold that on the turn probably. So uh, we got like a good hand on his side, because with the seven he kind of has like the top range of calling hands here for him, and it was pretty nice to get that pot here. As you see, we almost went full pot to be polarizing, and yeah, he had us on the bluff then, because of course all of the straight draws did not come in, and the backdoor flush draw, there's not too many backdoor flush draw hands we're gonna have other than like 8 10 of hearts or jack 8 of hearts, which is not possible here, but you get the idea. Yeah, that's it for today's educational video. It has been a nice almost 40 minutes with you guys. Uh, as always, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you can find us. And yeah, make sure to hit the link in the description below to find out about our courses. Either if you are a beginner and you're just playing free rolls because you can't or you won't play for money, check out our free roll master course to learn about the types of players in those tournaments, to learn about the different stages of free rolls and some basic poker math, and also make some quizzes to make sure you know everything and remember everything you saw in our videos. Or you go on our website for this course where we will teach you more about different programs and the softwares to use in poker, more types of MTTs and how to play them, some further ongoing poker math, and we do some hand analysis with you guys. I can show you hands of mine if you want, but in general, you guys send me some hands and we discuss them in a group. Also, you get individual courses, individual classes with me or with one of the other coaches for that, which is, I think, a pretty nice thing. And as said, this one is also for free. Instead of €300, you can get it for free. Just get in contact with one of our managers and they explain you everything. That's it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and then we'll see you on the next one. Bye.